Hello friends. So today is currently Tuesday and I upload on Thursday. Every Thursday for the last year and a half. I missed one, but we don't talk about that. I have uploaded a video and this is the first time I'm completely out of ideas. I'm reading a good amount, like I've already finished 5 books this month, but because I didn't vlog any of them, like the content isn't right. So what I decided to do is try to make some progress on the Read Harder challenge. I have said that I'm going to be doing it this year, but I haven't been purposefully picking stuff from here. It's just sort of whatever I read that happens to fall into here. Cool. So I went through and found 3 challenges that I think I can finish in like a day. The first one is read an entire poetry collection. Poetry goes super fast, so I think that'll be good. What I ended up finding was Celebrations by Maya Angelou. It's a 44-minute audiobook and it's Maya Angelou, like how could you go wrong? Then we have Read a New to You literary magazine. So I pulled up a couple, my library like has magazines. So I pulled up Reader's Digest Canada, The Writer, and The New Yorker. I don't read any magazines ever, so I'll pick one or sample bits from each of them. No one reads a magazine front to back anyway, so I'm kind of leaving this one up to interpretation. If I end up loving one, then I'll finish it. There were 3. What was that? Oh yeah. Read a queer retelling of a classic of the canon, fairy tale, folklore, or myth. For that, I looked up a whole list. I'll link it below. Book Riot has a list of that. And I'm going to be reading Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh, which is a retelling of The Green Man, I want to say, which I've never heard of, but that doesn't matter to me because the book is like 70 pages. And people do really like it, and I think it's gay. Only one way to find out. So my goal is over lunch to do the audiobook for the poetry and have little snippets of the magazine throughout my day in between meetings if I can, because I'm also busy tonight, and then tomorrow night I have to like edit and upload the video. So we're in a bit of a time crunch, but I think we can make it work. The magazine is definitely the thing that'll fall to the wayside if anything, because I can read half of that or I can finish it over the month. Hopefully that sounds like a good idea to you. It is a good question though. How many of these have I already finished? 5, 6, 7. I've done 7 out of 24, which isn't great. But then I'll get up to 10 out of 24 and that's much more respectable. All right, let's do this. Hi, it's me. I'm back immediately. Pay no attention to the angle of my room that you never see. So I started with the Reader's Digest magazine, which I think isn't what the challenge wants from me, but there is a good amount of book stuff in there. Anytime there is a book article, I am fully reading it. But there's just a lot of news stuff, lifestyle stuff. So those I am just skimming, but I did pick this edition over all the other ones, or this magazine over all the other ones, because it's got a true crime thing on the front cover, and that's interesting, and I feel like I read true crime books, so this is close enough. Gotta say, I'm not enjoying it. I don't think I'm a magazine girly. I don't like the short nature of it, and the writing is very dry. It's not all bad, I just don't think that I will become a regular of magazine reading. Though, if you have any more literary magazines that I might be able to get my hands on easily, I would appreciate it, because I do want to try. I do think it's interesting, I'm just not cultured enough, I guess. I'm not hip with like the industry, whatever's happening. I'll finish this up. I'm just about to read the true crime part, so that'll be the best part, hopefully. I'll find a good angle one of these days, I swear. I'll get like a proper setup. You won't see a bunch of Ritz crackers in the background and we'll be all good. So I'm still reading through the magazine and I just hit this part where they're talking about DNA and talking about acquiring it through 23andMe and Ancestry and how it helped the Golden State Killer. That's wrong. What this article is saying is wrong, and because I read the Michelle McNamara book. It doesn't go into that, but it's a great one, all about the Golden State Killer. But there is a video from Veritasium I will link down below. It's called How They Caught the Golden State Killer, but it's much more about the DNA extraction, privacy concerns, all that kind of stuff, and all of the limitations on it. This article is really scratching the surface, but in such a way that they're actually incorrect. And they have just like a little throwaway line in here that many forensics experts argue that privacy shouldn't impede the greater good that is catching criminals. And when you say it like that, sure, but the Veritasium video, it's great. You should go watch it. It goes into a lot more of the concerns around it and how, because this is like a network, your privacy isn't your own. I don't know. It's interesting. It's just, yeah, this whole cold case part isn't doing everything for me that I hoped it would. But anytime I can pitch that Golden State Killer book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark is what it's called. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books. And then there's an HBO documentary that's also great. And then this Veritasium thing, like, I'm well versed in the Golden State Killer. Also, the one thing that I think both of these articles forgot, or most people forget, and I don't know where I heard about it, I should track it down and see if it's actually true, is that the Golden State Killer was caught by like a second cousin or somebody's DNA who was in a criminal database. It wasn't an Ancestry 23andMe thing. It was something specifically designed for law enforcement. I'm pretty sure that that's true, but if it's not, don't come for me. So I started the poetry collection from Maya Angelou, and I really don't enjoy the audiobook. It's narrated by her, which should be good, but I'm just not enjoying it. And I don't have a physical copy, and I wanted to do this on audio, so we're not doing that. Then what I started was I Would Leave Me If I Could by Halsey, which immediately when I saw it, I was very intrigued because celebrity poetry is often, you know, not great. But I'm really enjoying it so far. These seem like a bunch of song lyrics that just never turned into songs. And the thing that made me want to update is I just finished the poem Stockholm Syndrome Part 1, and I think it's really good. I know nothing about poetry, first of all, so don't trust me with anything, but the way that poetry is broken up on different lines has always bugged me. But this one actually did a thing that like affected me. So it's a hostage situation. I know I should, but I can't leave you all alone, which just every line builds on the feeling or changes the context of what we're actually talking about. I think it's really interesting. I feel like this is somewhere between like artsy literature poetry and Instagram poetry, which might be my sweet spot. I do like Halsey. I've listened to a bit of her stuff. I don't know much about anything ever, but I'm really enjoying it, and all of the poems are super short, like a page or two. I wish it would give me a count of how many are in there, because I bet it's like 100. But that's actually perfect for this because I'm doing a poem or 2 or 3 and then doing some work, and then once I get the thing I'm working on working, or a section of it, then I go back and do another couple poems. And it's a lovely way to spend an afternoon. I do think that poetry is not the best to read in this context of speed reading, so I don't know how I would feel about this if I had stretched it out over a longer amount of time, but we shall see. Hello. It is the end of the workday. I need to do something about this wall. I hate it. And I constantly think about putting the piano in the basement, but then I get sad. So then I leave it, but I never play it. Anyway, you don't care about that. We're here to talk about the magazine. I finished Reader's Digest Canada, and the only thing left in it, in the back, there's a bunch of puzzles. And I've never seen this one before. They just call it 1 to 25. I just wrote it out in my notebook instead of printing it off. So I'm going to attempt to solve it. Except they give you one number to start with, and I didn't write it down, so now I have to find it. And now the neighbors are playing music. Just can't win. What can I tell you about the magazine? Wow, I'm not gonna be able to do this. I didn't like it. I didn't have a good time. I found most of the articles really lackluster, and Reader's Digest also has a bunch of jokes in it, and every single joke was bad. Also, the true crime part of it that I was so excited about was about a bunch of cold cases, and they didn't have any updates on any of them. Okay, that's not true. There were probably 6 and maybe 2 had had bodies found, but they were never like definitively linked to the case. It's still open. So that was super disappointing for a cover story. There was also a bit in the back about like a book club something maybe. They had a selection and so there was a whole review for the book. And that was fine, but not something I'm interested in. Not the book, like the book seemed fine, but just the way that it was spoken about, I don't know. It's just not for me. But I did it. I don't think that this necessarily counts as a literary magazine, but I'm gonna count it. As not great as this was, I don't think I could handle anything more highbrow. But that's one off the list, and I'm halfway through the poetry collection now, so we're well on our way. There is still hope once I figure out how to do this puzzle. I finished it. It was hard and I got scared for a minute that I had screwed it up, but I did it right. It's very hard. There's a lot of writing the very small numbers in the boxes, but it's a cool puzzle. I'm going to, you're so low, start in on Silver in the Wood because I don't have an audiobook for it. And the dog's very upset about that. If I can get this started now, that'll be better. I do have an audiobook for the poetry and I can read that piecemeal. The full audiobook is like an hour and a half and I'm listening a little bit faster, but not too much for poetry reasons. And I'm half done, so that can be finished up pretty quickly. This, I think, will need more of my attention. But my copy says it's only 70 pages, so hopefully that's true. And hopefully it is also a good book. Good morning. It is the next day. I made the mistake of drinking a Diet Coke at 8 p.m. and as a result I did not sleep until 3 a.m. So we're having a bit of a rough morning. This is why you don't socialize with people, because then you get all high and mighty about yourself and think that you can handle caffeine when you can't. So we don't have much reading to do today, but it might be a struggle to get through. We do have to do. We've got to do half of the poetry book and about half of Silver in the Wood. I was like, Green in the Wood. No, it's a different color. It's separated into 2 parts and I got to part 2 last night. It's definitely feeling like it's longer than 70 pages. Like every time I checked, I expected to be like 15% further and I was 6. So I'll have to check the Goodreads and see what their page count is. It's definitely not what I expected and it feels like part 2 is taking a turn. There was a development at the end of it. I should tell you what it's about. It's about this man named Tobias who lives in the woods and everybody in the town thinks he's like a wild man. Then this man, Silver, is his last name? Does he have a first name? It's just not in my brain. Shows up in his cabin one day and they start to form a friendship. And Silver is very interested in like the lore of the place, all of the old folk tales and myths and stuff. And Tobias is some sort of magical for sure. He talks to dryads at one point, so he's got some sort of mystical connection to the forest. I think it's left purposefully vague. Hello. It is now lunchtime and normally we go on a walk at lunch, but the hubby has a meeting over lunch, so we're gonna be reading. Also, a package came with some clothes, and this is the softest thing I've ever felt in my life. And I'm not fashionable at all, but I'm okay with that. I've been trying to make my way through the poetry collection, and I'm feeling the fatigue now. It's very samey. There's like 2 types of stories. There's like sad girl in love or sad girl but not in love. Those are the 2 types and they're all fine. They're just a little samey and they're basically song lyrics. I feel like I want to make a challenge to myself to take one of the poems and sing over it. But at this point I'm ready for it to be over. They actually do have a count and there are 81 poems in it. And 81 poems is too many, but we're gonna make some good progress in Silver in the Wood. I'm extremely tired. I didn't think staying up late last night had affected me so much, and it didn't, but then noon hit and I'm like, yeah, I need a nap or something. Maybe I'll read in bed, and if I happen to fall asleep, oh darn, I'll tell my husband to come to get me. I am still working. If anyone that I work with is watching this, I'm doing my job. But the thing I'm working on right now anyway, it refuses to work, so I'm pulling my hair out a little bit. So we deserve a break. The book immediately told me what Silver's first name is, and I immediately forget it. For some reason I want to call him Nick. His name is Henry, but I'm never gonna remember that. So I finished the poetry collection, and I don't really have much to say. I think I've said it all at this point. Day 2 of reading it was definitely more taxing than day 1. I didn't enjoy any of it nearly as much as I did the first day. So I think that I am probably just fatigued from it. Poetry isn't my thing, blah, blah, blah. We know all the stuff. I'm gonna give it 3 stars because I'm not mad at it. I feel like normally if I don't know how to feel about a nonfiction, I'll just throw it a 5. But this, I do feel like I can determine some artistic merit for it, and it was fine. I'm not mad at it. I do kind of wish I had read different poetry for this because I want to give it a shot, but every time I read poetry, it's not my thing. So maybe I should just give up. 2 down, 1 to go. We're actually gonna make it. Who knew? I swear I did work this afternoon, but I climbed back into bed to finish up. Silver in the Wood. I don't know why I have such trouble with it. Yeah, definitely not for me. Just sort of vaguely magical fantasy. Nothing's really explained. Stuff just sort of happens. There was this one like not a fight scene, but not a fight scene, and I couldn't understand who the players were, where they were, what was happening. Anything basically. It is also a duology, but it wraps up, so I'm happy about that. I don't think I'll be continuing in it. I'm torn on my rating because before this last chunk I was like 3 stars. Fine, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just sort of happening. But I don't know what happened, and the ending didn't go where I expected it to go, and not in a good way. But what I did want to do is look up what the Green Man myth is and see how much this aligns with it. So the internet doesn't seem to know what it's talking about. It seems like it's just very generic, like it's just sort of a spirit of the forest. Oh, hello. The Green Man means different things to different people in this day and age. To many, he represents a figure who's an environmental guardian or keeper of the forest or woods. So just a green man, a man of the forest, which is kind of what I took from this, that there's a guy in the forest. Don't know if that super counts. That would be like if I wrote a retelling of Zeus and it was just some horny guy getting everybody pregnant. So I'm not sold on this as a full-blown retelling. But I'm done. It's been recommended by a bunch of people, so I know now to not take those people's fantasy recommendations. I just need a little less fluff, I think. But in the right circumstances, I do like fluff. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want in fantasy, but at least this was short. I did check the Goodreads. My copy says it's 70 pages. Their copy says 112, which feels closer. Like I read 60 pages each day. I think I give this a 2. It's not bad by any means. Like I think people who enjoy this type of like fantasy environmental stuff with just a little bit of gay sprinkled in there, there's an audience for this for sure. But that means that we're done. Our little 24-hour, a little bit more than that, reading experience. We knocked off 3 prompts for the Read Harder challenge, a magazine, which I would probably give a 1 star, a queer retelling, which I would give 2 stars, and then the poetry collection, which I would give 3 stars. I could be talked into giving the poetry a 2. I did also notice Halsey has released an album since the publication of the poetry collection, and some of the song names have the same names as some of the poems. I don't think the content is very similar, but I bet there are bits and pieces pulled from here and there. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm sure you're tired of my face by now, and it's editing time, but I appreciate you joining me on this journey. I will finish the Read Harder challenge. I'm gonna have to try a bit harder, but this was a good step in the right direction. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you in my next video. Bye!